All right, first and foremost, all thanks and praises unto our power, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Wawakakwadash. Peace, blessings, much respect to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, on down to the rest of the elders who rule well within Israel. Salutations to the hopeful elect throughout the four corners of this whole entire earth, no matter where, whom they may be, or what they may look like, pushing out this purified truth to the rest of the church who believe as well, you men who may not be teachers or prophets, you women, sons and daughters also. The water to Yahweh Shai, because without him enduring and going to that cross for the nation of Israel and the nation of Israel alone, none of this would even be possible whatsoever. So I'm doing this video concerning the comment board. Hopefully I can answer a question that was given to me roughly a few days ago. This is from Asha Shal Ya'awada, and this is what it reads. Shalom, shalom, the water. Would you do a lesson on the differences or sameness amongst adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, and lewdness? And exactly what does Matthew 5:28 mean? If you have a lesson or lessons already, direct me. Barakatah. And it goes on a little further. Well, I'm hoping that I can answer your question with this video. It comes off like you're asking a lot, but you're really not asking a lot. So I'll try to simplify this lesson as much as possible. You know me, I got to read the scriptures. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So let's start off with Matthew's 5:28 concerning that, because you had questioned, what does this mean? Matthew's 5:28. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. This isn't speaking of just any woman. This specifically is speaking of a married woman. If you look upon a married woman and you lust upon her in your heart, you committed adultery. And it starts in your mind. All right? Let's read this again. Matthew 5:28. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. So you have to imagine back during this time when Yahweh Shai was speaking, he would be speaking among a multitude of people. So possibly, I imagine as he was speaking this, because he knew all people, he knew everything. He could read minds. So as he was speaking this, seeing that you also had women who were listening, there may have been certain men who had their eyes locked on to women who belonged to other men. So Yahweh Shai threw that out there, taking it further, that to have sex with a man's wife, typically, yes, that's adultery. But to take it even further, if you lust after a woman who's married in your mind, you've already committed adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Let's go to Matthew's 15. Matthew's 15 and verse 18. But those things which proceed out of the mouth come forth from the heart, being the mind, and they defile the man. For out of the heart, or the mind, proceed evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. So when you have your mind on a woman who's married and you have lustful thoughts, out of your heart has proceeded adultery. Adultery doesn't just have to start through the physical act itself. Adultery can start with you imagining bending over this woman who has a husband. You imagining sexual thoughts, desiring this woman sexually, coveting this woman to yourself when she already belongs to another man. Although you haven't touched her, although you haven't approached her, you've committed adultery in your heart. Okay? Let's go to the book of Sirach and the Apocrypha, also known as the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 9 and verse 8. Turn away thy eye from a beautiful woman, and look not upon another's beauty. So it says to turn thy eye from a beautiful woman. Why? Because if you look upon a beautiful woman and she has a husband, you've committed adultery in your heart. That's why it says, look not upon another's beauty, because she belongs to another man. That's his woman. Let's read this again. Ecclesiasticus chapter 9 and 8. Turn away thine eye from a beautiful woman, and look not upon another's beauty. For many have been deceived by the beauty of a woman, for herewith love is kindled as a fire. Sit not at all with another man's wife, nor sit down with her at thine arms, and spend not thy money with her at the wine, lest thine heart incline unto her, and so through thy desire thou fall into destruction. So when you lust after another man's wife, when you have the desire to want to sexually have this woman, you've committed adultery already. Let's read verse 8 again, and then we'll jump back to Matthew 5. Sirach chapter 9 and 8. Turn away thine eye from a beautiful woman, and look not upon another's beauty, desiring to lust after her. Okay? For many have been deceived by the beauty of a woman, for herewith love is kindled as a fire. And it's going to be like a rapid fire, because there are men who would lay down another man, put him to death over his woman. Okay? You know, that fire and desire, that love gets kindled as a fire, but that fire ends up burning you up. Okay? Because now the act of adultery has been committed. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 5. Let's see here. Matthew chapter 5 and 28. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her, being another man's wife, hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Okay? Now let's touch on lewdness. Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 22 and verse 9. In thee are men that carry tales to shed blood, and in thee they eat upon the mountains. In the midst of thee they commit lewdness. So what would be lewdness? What's an example of lewdness? If you try to plot on some kind of way to have sex with a man's wife, that will be an example of lewdness. Adultery itself would be an example of lewdness. Okay? Matter of fact, let's just go into the word. Hebrews 21:54. The word says, Zemah, plan, device, wickedness, evil plan, mischievous purpose, plan, purpose, evil device, wickedness, not chase, incest, that's a good word right here, licentiousness, hold on, let me say that again, licentiousness, that one's kind of heavy, adultery, idolatry, harlotry. All right, so there you go. Basically just being wicked, devising a wicked plan, would be an example of lewdness. So to sleep with another man's wife, that would be an example of lewdness, because for one, it's adultery, and two, it took a plan. It was an act of having a wicked idea. Okay. In thee have they discovered their father's nakedness. In thee have they humbled her that was set apart for pollution. And one hath committed abomination with his neighbor's wife, which is adultery. And another hath lewdly defiled his daughter-in-law. And another in thee hath humbled his sister, his father's daughter. So among our people, it's found a whole lot of wicked men and women. And just like it says here, and another in thee hath humbled his sister, his father's daughter. An example of that is when Tamar was took by force by her brother. What was his name? Was it Abner? And then Absalom ended up finding out about it. And he was pretty pissed off that, he had laid down with their sister. Now, I think that was the sister. Okay, it was a sister. It might have been another relation. I could be wrong. Don't quote me, but I believe it was the sister. And her name was Tamar. And she was basically took by force because her brother pretended to be sick. All right. But that's not to be so. That shouldn't be done. You shouldn't lay down with your father's daughter. All right. That's your sister. But anyway, that would be an act of lewdness. Sleeping with your father's wife, sleeping with anyone's wife. That would be an act of lewdness. Having an evil plot. That would be an act of lewdness. Okay. To basically be mischievous would be like the same as being lewd. Let's go to Proverbs. Chapter 24 and verse 8. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischievous person. So if you're a mischievous person, let's go into that definition. The word in Hebrews 42:09 is mezima, purpose, discretion, device, plot. So to be a mischievous person is really the same as being lewd. You're purposely doing wicked. You're plotting out acts of wickedness. You're trying to be crafty and find ways to be evil. Okay. To commit adultery with somebody's wife, that is being mischievous. That's being lewd. That's being an adulterer. Okay. Now, what's adultery? To sleep with the man's wife. For adultery for a woman is to sleep with the man outside of her husband, which we'll get that here in a little bit. Okay. The works of the flesh would be examples of lewdness as well. So in Galatians 5:19, now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of the power. So the works of the flesh are not going to allow us to receive the kingdom. The works of the flesh would be adultery, lewdness, uncleanliness. To commit adultery would be an act of uncleanliness. To commit adultery would be an act of lewdness. Let's go back into that question. Shalom, shalom, the water. Would you do a lesson on the differences or sameness amongst adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, and lewdness? And really, they all really play hand in hand. It's kind of like faith and hope. You know, they're different, but they're one and the same. Okay? Well, let's go further into it. What scripture is that? Let's go to Ezekiel. That's what I'll do. Ezekiel chapter 16 and verse 32. This is what adultery is. But as a wife that committed adultery, which taketh strangers instead of her husband. So what we have to understand is what adultery is. People make it seem like adultery is when a man has multiple women. No, it's when a woman has multiple men. If she's laying down with any other man outside of her husband, she is committing adultery. But as a wife that committed adultery, which taketh strangers instead of her husband. So adultery is sleeping with a man's wife. That's important to understand. Let's go to Jeremiah chapter 29 and 23. Because they have committed villainy in Israel and have committed adultery with their neighbors' wives and have spoken lying words in my name, which I have not commanded them. Even I know and am a witness, saith the Lord. So adultery, again, what is it? It's sleeping with a man's wife. That's what adultery is. Okay? Because they have committed villainy in Israel and have committed adultery with their neighbors' wives, not having multiple wives, that's not adultery. Adultery is laying down with a woman who was taken by another man. But to take it even further, adultery is if you lust after a woman in your heart who's married to another man. You've already performed adultery, lewdness, uncleanliness. Okay? Because really, when you go into the etymology of lewdness, it really just goes into unlearned. And it tells you in the scriptures, let's just go to it, in Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 32. But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. So to commit adultery, which is to lay down with a married woman or to lust after a married woman in your heart, you're destroying your own soul. You lack understanding. And when you go into the etymology of the word lewdness, it also goes into, I believe the word is unlearned. Basically stupid. To commit lewdness is a very stupid act. Okay? There's a punishment for it. That's why we have to do our best not to do that, because our people are involved with a whole lot of wickedness, man. And it just doesn't have any limitations on how far our people are willing to go with their ill behavior. All right. Let me see here. Let's go. I think I've read it already, but let's go back to it because it kind of goes into the question on the comment board. Galatians 5 and 19. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lasciviousness. So all these go hand in hand. And you asked about all these. Going into your question, it says, would you do a lesson on the differences or sameness amongst adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, and lewdness? Galatians 5 and 19. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanliness, lewdness. So we've already talked about adultery. That's sleeping with another man's wife, lusting after another man's wife, or a woman sleeping with any other man outside of her husband. Fornication, Greek 4202, illicit sexual intercourse. Adultery, fornication, homosexuality, lesbianism, intercourse with animals. So all those abominable acts are examples of fornication. Okay? Sexual intercourse with close relatives. For example, laying down with a sister, okay, or a brother. These are all different signs of fornication. So fornication goes into very abominable and detestable sexual acts. But the most common one would be adultery. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanliness. Let's go into that word uncleanliness. In Greek 167. The word here is akatharsia, uncleanliness, physical. In a moral sense, the impurity of lustful, luxurious, profligate living, or impure motives. Impurity, physically or morally. Uncleanliness. So that's pretty self-explanatory. For example, being an adulterer, that makes you unclean. Being a fornicator, that makes you unclean. Let's go into lasciviousness, which really just goes into uncontrolled lust. Greek 7:66. Unbridled lust, excess, lasciviousness, wantonness, outrageousness, shamelessness, insolence. So to be an adulterer, it's an unbridled lust. Because if you understand that the penalty is death, you understand that you're sinning against the Most High, but you say, you know what? I want this woman so bad that I'm willing to bypass that. That's an unbridled lust. That's an uncontrolled lust. Okay? And it starts with what? Having the adulterous mind, having the thought of wanting to lay down with this woman, seeing that she's already taken, you've already committed adultery. Because then from there, that's where the wicked plans start to come in. That's where you start to plot. That's where ill actions come in. When the penalty of adultery, according to the Bible, is death. Leviticus 20:13. If a man also lie with mankind as he lies with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They surely shall be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. Let me jump back a few. This is Leviticus 20:10. And the man that committed adultery with another man's wife. Again, what is adultery? To lay down with the married woman. To lay down sexually with a married woman, or to lust after a married woman. That is adultery. That's what Matthew 5:28 is referencing. Lusting after another man's beauty. And the man that committed adultery with another man's wife, even he that committed adultery with his neighbor's wife, the adulterer and the adulteress shall surely be put to death. So how does he commit adultery? Laying down with this woman who was already married to another man. How did she commit adultery as an adulteress? By laying down with this man when she already had a husband. Okay? So that's just what it comes down to. It's really all the same thing, different in its own, but really all play the same. So Lord willing, this was simple and edifying through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. I try to do my lessons 1 + 1 is 2. Hopefully, it equals 3 in your eyes. Kahala Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai. Until my next lesson, Lord willing, Shalom.